So, welcome to Becoming a Practical Mystic. And this is an adventure we'll be doing over the next 8 months. And it is an exploration of the variety of mystical experiences and also the practices of awakening the mystic within us and how practicing that mysticism helps heal our lives and heals the world. So I'm Reverend Barbara Williams, and I am joined with our music director, Janine Camara, and we are part of the family of Unity of Chautauqua. So, just a little bit about what's going to happen over the next few months is once a month on the first Wednesday at from 7 to 8 p.m. we're having this exploration of mysticism, but we'll also be recording it and putting it on YouTube and on Facebook, and you can get to those by going to unitychq.org. And you can also sign up for our email because I'll be emailing some of the suggested practices we'll be looking at during this adventure. So for the first few minutes, I will be sharing and then we will stop recording. And then for a few minutes after, at the very end, for about 15 minutes, we'll look at some exercises that can expand our understanding of what mysticism is and how that is a blessing in our lives. So, right now, Janine is going to invite us into some time of silence. I like to start when we start, especially a class like this, to spend a little time in just centering ourselves from the busyness of our day, and then we'll go right into a meditation. So, Janine.
life you'll find me as a love in everything. For nothing can be separate when there's only this, it seems. You are the wonder, glory of life, miracles gazing from your eyes. When you lose your life, you'll find me. You will find me everywhere, as the joy inside of laughter and the smile inside despair. When you lose your life, you'll find me as a love in everything. For nothing can be separate when there's only this, it seems. You are the wonder, glory of life, miracle gazing from your
So let's take a moment and settle ourselves in to those words. And just notice. Notice your breath. No need to change it, just notice. And how even the breath is a giving and taking, a bringing in and then a letting go. As we exhale, we lose what we no longer need. And as we inhale, we bring the blessings of life in to revitalize, to find our true essence. The breath reminds me of how I am nurtured, that I will find an expansion of who I am. And it's a process of being open and receiving, and then expelling and letting go. And with each breath, we sink deeper into that essence of our being, the joy in our laughter, the smile inside despair, the love within everything, the breath reminding us, being open to receive, allowing ourselves to be nurtured, and then letting go and releasing. The wonder of life. The breath calling us deeper into the essence of who we really are. When we forget, our breathing becomes shallow and labored, but we only have to find that essence by again returning to be nurtured. You are the wonder. You are the glory of life. And so we take that into just a moment of silence. Again, focusing on our breath, the gift and the release, the gift of life and the release.
When you lose your life, you'll find me. You will find me everywhere. As the joy inside of laughter and the smile inside despair. When you lose your life, you find me as a love in everything. For nothing can be separate when there's only this, it seems. You are the wonder, glory of life, miracle gazing from your eyes. When you lose your life, you'll find me.
So thank you, Janine. And let's just take a breath of that. Because as I was preparing to share with you this evening, mysticism is one of my favorite topics because for me, we say a lot of things in unity, like there's one presence and one power. Mysticism calls us to say, I want to feel it. I want to experience God. I just don't want to say words, but I want to know it. And by knowing it, I want to spread it through that very transformation that takes becomes part of me. And so we're going to be looking at all sorts of wonderful mystics through time. And I'd like to start with a poet, Robert Browning, and I'm sure you've heard this one. Um, Truth is within ourselves. It takes no rise from outer things, whatever you may believe. There is an inmost center in us all, where truth abides in fullness. And around, wall upon wall, the gross flesh hems it in. This perfect, clear perception, which is truth. A baffling and perverting carnal mesh binds it and makes all air. And to know rather consists in opening out a way whence the imprisoned splendor may escape. And so I believe he's talking about that our lives, that we're born with this splendor, wonder, like Janine was just singing, within us. And then somehow culture, family, all the things, it's imprisoned. And he's acknowledging that it's always longing, that all of us have this longing. And so today's my sharing is called The Imprisoned Splendor for our first week. So I found a definition, and the book I'm using, one of the books, and it'll be in the emails that I send out, um, is not in print anymore, but there are quite a few used copies, and it's just my favorite. I probably have 10 books on mysticism because I've taught it before, but that was like 20 years ago. A most surprising song, and again, it's in your notes, and it's written by a Unity author, but they look at all the different practices through time and through different spiritual practices. This woman, as well as looks at the Fillmores and their practice of mysticism. So here's the definition she has, and that's Luann Stahl, who wrote this book. To be a mystic is to see ourselves as we really are and see the world as it really is, and see that we and the world are one. Now, you probably think, and I probably think I see myself as a real, but I've had certain experiences in my life which made me see this beauty and love within the world that in my regular consciousness I was unaware of. And so I want more of that. And you probably do too. You've probably had those glimpses of what I think, believe Jesus might have called the pearl of great price, which he said a parable where the person seeking it would sell everything for it. And that's my experience when I've had those moments like, why do I get stuck in that every day like I'm on automatic pilot when there's a world of love and joy that I'm missing because I'm not seeking it? I'm just so in a pattern. And so we're going to see if we can slowly undo some of that pattern over the next months and live more in that consciousness. And by that very fact, we are going to bless other people as well as ourselves. So, Charles Fillmore, our co founder at Unity, said that Unity is practical mysticism. And he said it is not an escape from life, but an enrichment of life. To participate in knowing our oneness is to contribute to the evolution of our world, vital for human survival. Now, maybe you got caught up, I've got caught up in a bit of the news and thinking, we seem to be going a little backwards. And in fact, there's kind of this uh, nihilism going on, this kind of let's burn it all down, nothing's right. We've got to take back an old way of being. And many of us have thought, well, gee, kind of. I felt like we were kind of going in this great direction. For me, that's a sign that that direction is scary for some people. And that I believe there, mysticism hundreds of years ago, in fact, BC, one of the mystics, Pythagoras, said, "Do not worry that we are all God." So way back, like that was in the 5th century BC, already mysticisms were said there was an evolution going on. But remember that back then, just a few people read these works. Many of the most wonderful mystics were away in just were nuns, or they were kept separate. Nobody was writing about it or sharing it. So I'm more optimistic about that what we're seeing is a call for healing. In Revelations, and I don't know about you, but I've avoided Revelations often. The original understanding I had of it was one that made me uncomfortable, like there's going to be an end of the world and a bunch of people are going to suffer and only a few are going to be saved. But having studied in seminary, I learned that Revelation, the history of Revelation, is that the Romans were treating the Christians about the year 100 when that was written. Were treating them horribly. And John, who was probably a follower of the original Apostle John, um, he couldn't say it outright what he'd like to see happen to the Romans. So he did it with all this imagery that was pretty scary. And as metaphysics, as we look in unity at metaphysics, we can look at that and say, well, gee, we've got some of that going on in our own heads, don't we? And right now we see it in our country. People, and I find myself arguing with things and resisting things. And Revelation kind of does that. But at the end, Revelation predicts that a new consciousness is being born. And I'd like to read just a couple lines from Revelation. His vision, and remember again, this is a dreamlike state. I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from heaven from God. Behold, the dwelling of God is with men. He will dwell with them, and they shall be his people. For the former things will pass away. By its light, all nations will walk. So way back then, in the 1st century, John was predicting that there would be an evolution of consciousness. And if we look really, if we're historians, we kind of look and say, this is one of the best times in the world to have lived. Even though we're seeing a lot of pushback in the evolution going forward, it's still an evolution. So Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Lao Tzu, and Paul on the road to Damascus, they are all had that mystical vision. And what I realized about all of them is that they saw oneness where others saw separation. So that's our invitation to live more and more in that mystical consciousness, is for us to see oneness where others are seeing separation. And I'm not saying that's not easy, and I'm not saying that we have to do a lot of forgiveness, that we'll feel resistance, we'll feel anger, and we'll get to work through all those feelings because we're moving that way, healing ourselves as well as embracing to get to that place of oneness. So I would like to read from the Imprisoned Splendor again, and this is from a physician. And what's great about the book is that it's the book again. It it has all these different experiences of different people in different backgrounds, and how, I mean, some were in jail, some were children, some were atheists, and they described an event, a mystical experience that changed how they see the world. And so I wanted to share one of them. There's like 50 of them in this book, and they're just delightful to read. And this one is from Maurice Burke, and he was a Canadian physician in the 1800s. And this, he believed that mystics had attained an advanced form of consciousness, which through evolution will become more common until eventually it will be attained by all people. And he describes one evening where, and you can imagine this, him and some of his friends were reading all the great mystical poets like Browning and Walt Whitman and all that sort of the thing. And they're filled with this wonderful friendship and camaraderie. And he is leaving now in his carriage, and he describes this light that fills him in the carriage, and it kind of shocks him. It comes upon him. And this is what he saw and knew. He said that the cosmos is not dead matter, but a living presence, that the soul of man is immortal, that the universe is so built and ordered that without any pre-adventure, all things work together for the good of each and all, that the foundation principle of the world is what we call love, and that happiness of every one is in the long run absolutely certain. He then claimed that this illumination lasted only a few seconds, during which time he said all the years of study he had done, he learned more in those few seconds than all he had been taught. So, you know, when I was, this was before I was really, I went to Unity Church, but I wasn't really involved or taking classes at that point. But I was in a class on meditation, and I had that experience. Just, I'd been meditating very seriously with this group. This was very serious. Hours every week. We'd spend together every weekend a couple hours meditating. And one time, a new person came into the group, but she'd been working. There was a therapist leading it, and she'd been working on it. And she came out of the meditation rather than mellow, like I was feeling, and just so full of love. She came out crying and very miserable. And I was taken back a bit coming out and feeling this. And she was so angry. She had really touched the abuse, and she'd been working with the therapist on this for a while, but this was her breakthrough. She could feel how angry she was, and she's weak and mad, and her face is bright red. And all of a sudden, I felt like this energy move through me towards her. I did not think about it, I did not invite it, but it felt like love was pouring, and all I could see was how beautiful she was. She was perfect, and all the things she believed, because she was saying how terrible she was and how could this happen to her, and I saw that it wasn't true. I mean, I didn't see, it was kind of like a feeling, like love was just pouring through me. She stopped and noticed and stopped crying and was looking at me and saying, "What are you doing?" And she came over to me and started putting her arms around me and looking at me. And I told her I wasn't doing anything, but it just kept pouring. And she started laughing, and we started smiling together. And it lasted for me, that feeling, months. And I'm telling you this now, what, probably almost 30 some years, maybe more. And it still affects me because it told me about what the truth was that I don't see in my judging the how I've been taught. And I've had since little smaller ones since. But it came to me later, after I'd studied a lot of Jesus's work and been a minister, that I wonder if that's how Jesus healed. I wonder if when people are saying, "I'm sick, I'm miserable," he's going, "I see you. You're beautiful. You're wonderful. You're perfect. Just even with the hurts and everything, you're perfect." And I just thought, I will bet he lived that all the time. And there were probably people that he saw that about them, but they weren't open to feeling it like that woman was with me. And so, that's why mysticism has been such an important thing for me to want, because those are just little touches, and I've had just little touches in my life, and I'm curious, and maybe you're curious. I wonder if I can make more experiences like that. Those are healing experiences for me, and it was for another person as well. So, William Wordsworth says something about this too, same book. And he says, I'm just going to read a couple lines from his poem. I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of setting suns, and the round ocean and the living air, and the blue sky, and in the mind of man, a motion and a spirit that impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and rolls through all things. Of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime. Isn't that beautiful? I just love that. So another mystic that lived from 1881 through 1955 was Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, and he was a priest and a religious mystic, and he was renowned paleontologist as well. And he believed in this evolution of humanity, of consciousness. And he believed, what I really like too, is he believed that eventually science and spirituality would come together and come to the same conclusions. And haven't we seen some of that in quantum physics? If you've studied some of that, and the power of thinking, and our Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, said that in um, the atom smashing power of mind. He said that way before anybody had talked about quantum physics or things like that. People have been knowing that there's a science as well as a spirituality to it. And later in his life, this is what he wrote. He said we were destined. He said we were the leading shoot. This reason and religion that comes together will be the leading shoot of evolution, destined for not only survival, but also a super life. He did his research to prove that the mystic vision and scientific research were reconcilable. And so he said this: throughout my life, by means of my life, the world has little by little caught fire in my sight until flame all around me. It has become completely luminous from within. Such has been the experience in contact with the earth, the divine at the heart of the universe on fire, Christ, his heart of fire, capable of penetrating everywhere and gradually spreading everywhere. Isn't that beautiful? I get so excited by these. I think I've reread this book so many times because I get lost in my everyday, oh, ain't it awful, you know? Some of I spend too much time in the news rather than um, practicing the practices I know that open me up to this knowing that these mystics spent lifetimes exploring. So, just a couple things from the book. Even it, there's lots of variation in mystical experience, and if you decide to read the book or other books on mysticism, you'll see that no pattern is the same. And so, your experience, the one I shared with you, you'll have other ones, and I hope that over as we do this as we do that meet the first Wednesday, or if you're online doing it, I hope you'll start journaling and thinking about, and I'm going to suggest some practices that may enhance that you'll just write those little knowings of oneness that you get, and that in our time after we're recording, if you're on with us, I hope you'll share some of those ideas and inspire us. So here's some of the things that you can that are in that pattern. that may help you recognize that in your life. First, it's a lived experience. It's not something in your head. It's a feeling that just holds your whole body, a sense of being at last awake. Have you had that? Sometimes that sense of just, you're in a certain, it might be by a waterfall, that's happened to me before. That time stands still and you're awake. Also, often the experience for people is overwhelming joy and love. And they start understanding that's the essence of the universe. And in our small vision, we've not seen it. The third that can waken us up is we'll feel the peace of God, which Paul said in Philippians passes all understanding. So, you know that Paul felt that same thing, that there were times, and you read some of his writings I argue with, and I think I see him as human and both divine, that he moves back and forth in those times when he's just grouchy and he's angry, and then other times he says things like this, or he says, Christ in you, the hope of glory, one of Charles Fillmore's, our co-founder's favorite line, that he saw that everybody had that divine pattern in potential. And so, one way we know that is when we're feeling peace and we feel the unity of all creation. That's often right, that goes along perfectly with peace because when you're feeling peaceful, you're not feeling against anyone anymore. So, you would feel unity. You would not start creating in your mind others, those others, which a lot of us are doing nowadays, aren't we, with our politics and things, or this group is the other and they're wrong and they're destroying the country and so forth. None of that's going to help with healing. Any of those things we're seeing wrong. There are things to heal, definitely, and those are problems. And at times I have to work with those in the hurt I feel and the fear I feel. But the gift I give is peace and unity, is not pushing against that, but loving it into its fullness and its new understanding. And the fourth one is that illumination of the meaning of life. That we get a thing that, gee, I had the meaning of life as how perfect am I, or what have I accomplished? And we start going, oh my goodness, this was simpler than I thought. The meaning of life is love, is to be open, not to kick people out of our hearts. It's so much simpler than I've made it. And again, back to the fifth one, and I'd already said it, it's we experience this time of mysticism outside of time, the eternal now. And we start knowing that our consciousness, who we are, absolutely is eternal. So I'd like to read again from a couple of the other books I did. And this one is from the Essential Mystics. There's this wonderful man. He was a former priest, and Andrew Harvey. And he wrote a couple books, and I've got a couple of them, and this one's the Essential. And he goes through all the different religious traditions, and he talks about their mysticism. And so I thought that this week I would just read one of the prayers from the first voices, meaning the Native American in our country. And this one is a traditional Native American prayer. It's called Let Me Walk in Beauty. O Great Spirit, whose voice speaks in the woods and in the trees, whose breath gives life to all the world, listen to your creature. Hear me. I am small and weak. I need your power. I need your wisdom. Let me walk in beauty, and let my eyes be glad, beholding the red and purple dawn. Make my hands touch all things you have made with love, and help my ears to hear your voice in everything. Make me wise, that I may understand the sacred teachings that you have taught. Help me learn the lessons hidden in every leaf and every stone. O Wakantanka, I need power, not to be great, but to conquer the enemy in myself. Make me ready to come to you always with a pure heart and with clear eyes. So when the time comes for my life to fade away, as the sunset fades, so may my spirit come to you with honor and without shame. Isn't that beautiful? I just love that. And the other one, this is from one of Andrew's Harvey's other books, which is The Teachings of the Christian Mystics. And this one you may have heard before. And this one's God Speaks to My Soul. And this is by a 13th century nun, mystic. And again, in a convent. It's not until like the 1940s and stuff, some of this started being published. And so we are now have the gift of hearing these wonderful voices. Her name, and I'll see if I can pronounce it, Methilde de Maidenberg. And so she says, God speaks to the soul. And God says to the soul, I desired you before the world began. So I invite you to just allow these words to be said to you, that God's speaking to the soul. I desire you now as you desire me. And where the desires of two come together, there love is perfected. How the soul speaks to God. Lord, you are my lover, my longing, my flowing stream, my sun, and I am your reflection. How God answers the soul. It is my nature that makes me love you often. We'll feel that. Can you imagine meditating with that? It is my nature that makes me love you often. For I am love itself. It is my longing that makes me love you intensely. For I yearn to be loved from the heart. It is my eternity that makes me love you long. For I have no end. Oh, okay. So Andrew Harvey says this about it, to sum this up, is he said, cultivating mysticism is to bring forth the Divine Mother, the sacred feminism often hidden, yet I believe necessary for the survival of our species, putting love into action. We then have the marriage of the divine masculine and feminine, what the Taoists call yin and yang, the Hindus called Shiva and Shakti, and what we call the Christ consciousness. This love must permeate heaven and earth, the sacred and secular. This is the real second coming, the birth of Christ consciousness in millions of beings, risking incarnating divine love into action. Is this not the vision of the mystic that is hope for us all? So now I'm going to invite Janine to sing one of my favorite songs. And this is Raising the Veil. And then we're going to stop recording and we'll just have a little time for a discussion and a few ideas about practicing this in our lives this month.
Okay, if you can see the chat bar, I put the words just in the event you feel like on a late Wednesday night breaking out into song, you can join me. As long as you keep it on mute, okay? I'm just kidding. I'm raising the veil between me and my God. No separation, no distance at all. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. I'm raising the veil. I'm raising the veil between me and my God. No separation, no distance at all. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. I'm raising the veil. I want to know you, oh God. I'm raising the veil. I want to see you, oh God. I'm raising the veil. I want to hear you, oh God. I'm raising the veil. I want to feel you, oh God. I'm raising the veil. I want to praise you, oh God. I'm raising the veil. I want to love you, oh God. I'm raising the veil. I'm raising the veil between me and my God. No separation, no distance at all. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. God is right here in my heart. I'm raising the veil.
So thank you for coming this evening.